Kids Comics. Silver-haired Bronze Age babe here, yakking about her comic book collection, and today I'm going to do a deep dive into this particular comic from Charlton Comics called Just Married. I have been doing some research of late relative to the romance comics and how they handled second wave feminism in the early 70s. Sometimes the books incorporated the women's lib movement by name, and so I've done some things about how that has been handled. Other times, the books just take on the themes of the day and give you an insight into what the writers and editors and publishers really think about the women's movement if you read between the lines. This book does exactly that, and I really feel for 12, 13, 14-year-old girls in 1972 who were fed this steady diet of drivel. Most of the romance books are about getting young girls married. You know, the idea is to get married. For God's sakes, just get married. Now, Charlton was kind enough to produce a book that explained to them, now if you do get married, when you do, here's how you do it. And this book is just chock full of advice. So the first story is Each Day I Die. This is about a woman who's married to a police officer, and she's just scared to death that he's going to go off to work and get shot and die, and she really hates it. And he's like, yeah, but I'm a cop, and that's what I do. And she said, well, what if I go to work and then I can earn extra money, and then you can get a different job? And he's like, heck no, no woman of mine is going to get a job. We agreed. So there you go. She, at one point, there's one panel here where she's talking about, she's under the care of a doctor, apparently. And, oh, here it is. Another miserable headache. Dr. Adams told me I've got to stop worrying or I'll have a nervous breakdown. So there's what you can expect, ladies, when you get married. Have a nervous breakdown. So she follows him at one point to his beat. And she finds out how he manages to deal with crime back in 1971 in whatever town they live in. She finds a man racing out of his apartment trying to attack his wife with a knife. You know, of all of the crime that a beat cop could encounter and deal with effectively, I think it's fascinating that the guys at Charlton decide what really they need to show is domestic violence. So, hooray. But he beats that guy up, and she sees how brave he is, and oh my God, you're just so great, I'm not going to be scared anymore. Yay. The second story, A Fool for Love. These two are married, but he still hangs around with his ex-girlfriend and their friends, and they're just way more mod and hip than the wife. And so the wife decides, you know, I'm going to get a makeover, and I'm going to go to these obnoxious parties that your friends have. And then he finds out he doesn't really like that. Wait a minute, you're changing. I don't like that. And she... basically, I mean, I guess it's okay because they end up compromising. He's like, well, all right, you can wear this slutty clothes when you go to these parties, but at home, I want you to wear something nicer. And she's like, yeah, that's fine, but let's go back to the slutty party. It's like, okay, great. And then finally, this is take an order, darling. This story, this guy, we meet him making out with this woman at her office, and the boss is like, what are you doing? And the guy announces that, oh, we're in love, and oh, by the way, we're getting married, which of course was news to her. And 3 weeks later, they get married in this kind of hippie cool way, and a reception that doesn't look like any other wedding reception that you would expect. And so he basically tells her, here, we're going on a honeymoon. She had no input into that whatsoever. He takes her up into the woods, out away from everybody and everything, to this really ramshackle, gross cabin, and she's not too thrilled with that, but doesn't matter because he's, as he says, the groom traditionally carries the bride across the threshold. Althea, come on. She's like, yeah, okay. And then he helpfully instructs her that, okay, now you have to unpack and you have to make some food for us and you have to clean up. And she says, I never cooked anywhere like this. I won't do it. And he says, quote, that's squaw work, baby. I'll do the man's work and you take care of the grub and cleaning and all that jazz. And she says, don't tell me that. I won't take orders. And at which point, apparently, he hits her. Youch, Rudy, you brute. It's like, okay. So she ends up doing it and making dinner and cleaning up. And he says, you have to promise never to give me a hard time again, Althea. We'll be happy. She's like, oh, darling, I wish I could be sure of that. And then the next day, he's an artist, you see. So he takes her outside and she's modeling for him because he's going to sell some of these pieces to ad agencies. And she's like, wait a minute, am I just a piece of clay for you? Is that it? And they get into another little spat, and she pushes him into the lake, and then, because he's so funny, he doesn't come up right away, and she thinks he's drowned. But he hasn't. And he says, but you know what, you're actually right for pushing me in. Maybe, I guess I have been a little too bossy since our marriage. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, maybe there's something to be said for this after all. But no, Althea says, I'm not complaining, Rudy. I want you to stay exactly as you are. I really meant my vows when I promised to love, honor, and obey. And that's how those stories ended. So there you have it. Advice on how to get and stay married from the folks at Charlton, 1971. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time.